Hey, everybody, we're back with the co-hosts of Showtime's The Circus, Alex Wagner, John Heilemann, and Mark McKinnon. Alex, let's talk about some of the people who went up to Capitol Hill. I know that in October, you talked to a militia group, whatever that necessarily means. It's self-styled militia group that are called the Three Percenters from Georgia. And I understand some members of that group did go to that riot that day. What did you take away from that conversation? What is motivating these people?
A sense of grave injustice. I mean, and I should say, I interviewed them in October, and already they were saying, if Joe Biden wins this election, it's fraudulent. If Donald Trump wins, it's not. That, of course, defies basic logic, but that's where they were, weeks before the election. They said that they were ready for the next civil war. There was a very unified sense of purpose. There was urgency. There was anger. And there was a sense of, I would say, misplaced patriotism in all of this. And those are really intoxicating things, right? Like, this group of self-styled guys had banded together. They had assigned each other quasi-military designations. One of them was a sergeant. One of them was a general. And there was a real sense of belonging. And that's actually central to Trumpism, right? Part of this, the reason he has been so it's been impossible to break the fever of his rhetoric and his administration is because people are tied to him in a very deeply emotional, personal way. And that was the feeling that I got from the militia. They were explicit about, arms, weaponry. They were doing basic training on their own. They were preparing for insurrection. And violence has been so long part of the Trump DNA, it was really, or violent rhetoric, I should say, that it was hard to distinguish, as the FBI later said this week, it's hard to distinguish like the bravado of language from the intention to act. And in the aftermath of that interview, I sort of thought, my God, maybe we should report this to the FBI because, at once you think, okay, they're just saying these things. And as we see, it is painfully obvious that they had every intention of carrying out a bloody mission to overthrow democracy.
Now, there are a lot of comparisons, or a lot of people talk about the Civil War when they talk about this particular insurrectionist uprising and sort of a shadowy movement across the United States to be in resistance of the new government. I find that comparison a little facile because however evil the South's intentions were, which was to maintain an economic system based upon enslaving other people, they had a system and they had an intention. Yeah. This would be as if Abraham Lincoln, had threatened to take away the South's unicorns. It is based upon a fantasy as opposed to a warring idea over what should be the economic engine for half of the country.
Yeah, well, listen, the South was also still tied to the world of facts and reality. They may have had a corrupt agenda, but at the end of the day, there were agreed upon realities. Yes. That is not the case in this. The militia groups, Fox News might have been their gateway drug, but they are existing in a world of paranoid conspiracy. And by the way, that has affected and infected most Republican voters at this point. I mean, there is really an alt reality that they live in.
I mean, Alex makes a great point, Stephen, particularly the patriotic thread of the madness, which is, think about the inverse craziness of this. These people are being encouraged by a president to preserve democracy by overthrowing it. They are asking to preserve democracy by overturning a lawful election. And somehow, and believe me, that's the code they got at that rally. They just said, listen, if you want your country back, go to the Capitol. And what do you think they thought he meant when he said, don't show weakness? I mean, it's like a mob boss, defending himself by saying, well, I didn't say pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. Hell, I was ready to go to get a pitchfork.
Mm-hmm. You got to fight like you've never fought before.
Yeah.
I'll say this, though, Stephen, and this will make you all the more, I find thinking about it this way even more disconcerting, right? In 1995, in April of 1995, I woke up on an April morning and heard that the Murrah building in Oklahoma City had been blown up, and got on a plane and flew there to cover that. And Timothy McVeigh, and that was the first time I ever heard the words Michigan militia was in 1995. That's 25 years ago. And I think you draw a direct line between that. This has been out there in the dark corners of American political culture for the last 25 years at least, and further back. But Donald Trump is nothing but a more potent version of Pat Buchanan. And the fact that it's now come out, I raise it all to say this. I think, Donald Trump's going to be gone on next Wednesday, and we're either going to convict him, the Senate's either going to convict him or not, and he's either going to be able to run for office again or not. But none of those things are going to change the reality that this kind of hatred and the anti-government sentiments that, incoherent though they are, that have animated these people, it's a growing part of the Republican Party, as Alex said, and Donald Trump is the ultimate accelerant for it. But in the absence of Donald Trump, it will still be there. And it's why I worry that we're really now on the precipice of a period of time in the country in which, if not civil war, political violence is going to become an increasingly regular and routine thing in our lives.
The Circus airs Sundays on Showtime. John Heilemann, Mark McKinnon, and Alex Wagner, everybody. We'll be right back with a performance by the War on Drugs.